I spent 29 years in the U.S. military, and the reason we are here is for those troops.
On so many distant shores, we're here to say that we can't take our grandkids anymore. The Granny Peace Brigade.
I welcome everybody who disagrees with me or everyone who has any dissenting opinion or any opinion whatsoever here to the White House.
The Granny's trekking through. Move on over or we'll move on over you. The Granny Peace Brigade.
We are withdrawing our consent from a government who spies on us and checks our bank records.
They do not support the troops. As a matter of fact, they have given money to the Iraqi terrorists.
We want to go back to what should have been the basic values of this country: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
The Marine who was killed this morning, I can't get over that. The over 2,500 soldiers who are dead, I can't get over that.
These are some of America's voices. Today I want to show you, through my journey in Washington, D.C., some of America's loudest voices. You know them as activists, protesters, patriots, depending on your view. I hope to show you that there are many styles of activism. Some try to convey a message through humor, others through scare tactics. Others use accusations and biting comments against their opponents. Some simply choose to sit or stand in solemn silence. All of these styles and more have their pros and cons. And you can be the judge, as others and I comment and reflect on what you will see up ahead. Before we dive in, however, let us begin by briefly looking at the history of activism in America. Activism has been a part of America since its very beginning and has continued through its history. Activism began early on with events such as the Boston Tea Party, where the colonists of Boston, fed up with burdening taxes on tea in America, dumped pounds and pounds overboard a merchant ship and into the Boston harbor. Activism continued during the Revolution, with Thomas Paine's book, Common Sense, being spread through the American colonies like wildfire, through Benjamin Franklin and the other patriots who worked to rally the goodwill of the colonists and spread the founding message of what has developed into the country I love today. Later on, as time progressed, during the Civil War, activism in America approached another peak due to the growing pressure and popularity of the abolition movement. This picture depicts what was often a common confrontation between abolitionists and slavery supporters outside a county courthouse. The abolition movement was fueled by passion and energized by leaders such as Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and President Abraham Lincoln. In Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Lincoln gave special recognition to America's important relationship with activism.
And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
After the successes of the abolition movement, other movements started taking off and gaining support, including the women's suffrage movement, known for strong leaders such as Susan B. Anthony. Activists like Susan mobilized crowds for marches, conferences, and other suffrage-supporting actions. All of these factors eventually led to the ratification of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing women the right to vote. Things didn't stop there, and the flames of the civil rights movement that were ignited by the abolitionists began to burn brilliantly during the 1950s and 60s, where support was huge for Americans who had been made second-class citizens because of their race. The civil rights movement began the move toward the more modern protests we see today. The idea of civil disobedience, although it had been practiced for a long time in America, was highlighted by the New Age press, which brought pictures of the peaceful marches across the country to millions of Americans. With the success of new types of mass media, Some Americans were getting their first looks at activism and seeing some of the tragedies inflicted upon peaceful activists just looking for the rights they deserved. Due to this, people were becoming more involved as marches became larger and speeches were seen by greater and greater audiences. People began to take more risks and began to question government decisions such as going to war in Vietnam. Vietnam protesters, which were fueled by a strong youth base who felt they were being drafted into an unfair war, spoke up and started mass demonstrations against a war in a way that had never been executed by such a large crowd before. All these things paved the way for activism today. And as you will see, protesters have taken lessons on style from these great civil demonstrations that came before. Now, having taken a quick look of activism's history, let's turn our attention to the modern protests we see today. And what better place to go than Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the capital of our country, and the capital of activism in America. And that is no coincidence. Since the D.C. area is the central meeting place for our nation's 3 legislative branches, it is the best place for activists to go because they can demonstrate in front of the movers and the shakers of America. Aside from politicals, Washington, D.C. also attracts many government and corporate think tanks, such as the American Enterprise Institute, which often come under fire from activists. These factors contribute to why Washington, D.C. is a true protest goldmine. And there is no understatement when I say goldmine. There are over 50 different activist groups currently running demonstrations and meetings in the D.C. area, including the Catholic Worker, the American Friends and Service Committee, Voters for Peace, the Free Republicans, or Freepers as they like to be called, Military Families Speak Out, and Code Pink for Peace. Many of these groups who share the same ideas create networks in order to work together and support each other's demonstrations. For example, DAWN, the D.C. Anti-War Network, has weekly meetings where various activists from different groups come to alert members of demonstrations and campaigns. But the most interesting thing I discovered is that Washington, D.C. is a very accurate microcosm of America. With so many people living in the city having been drawn from all parts of America for business or political reasons, and also because of the vast amount of tourists visiting from all over, I realized I was surrounded by one of the most diverse populations of Americans with some very diverse opinions. For example, when I asked people what issues are often contested by activists, I got a variety of different answers.
Well, abortion, for sure.
Poverty and homelessness.
Illegal immigrants.
Workers' rights.
Sexual assault.
Immigration.
Gay marriage. Maybe healthcare.
There's taxes, there's housing, homeless people.
Maybe abortion.
Gas prices.
And labor issues.
I've been a cannabis activist for 20 years.
Medical marijuana here in D.C.
Cannabis user for close to 30.
More environmental issues.
Peace is most important.
It's education, it's a lot of things.
About abortion, reproductive health issues, women's rights.
Politics, religion, people protest all kinds of things, you know.
But there was one very common answer among the rest.
Of course, it's mostly Iraq and this illegal, immoral invasion.
The first thing that would come to my mind would be the situation in Iraq.
The war. The invasion of Iraq. President Bush.
People protest about war.
The war.
War involvement.
And it's war.
The war in Iraq is on the minds of all Americans. Therefore, it comes as no surprise that it is the most hotly contested issue in Washington. As the matter at hand concerns our men and women in uniform, and moreover, our national pride. There are many voices raised in the debate. While the views of those involved are varied, the war is a polarizing issue, and one of high stakes, especially to those who have family overseas. Protesters in Washington, although often clever and inventive, sometimes struggle to find an effective means of conveying their message. This is Carol Moore. She is a passionate opponent to the use of nuclear weapons.
No bomb raid leads to nuclear war with Russia.
Here, she makes her demonstration outside the offices of the American Enterprise Institute out of concern that the AEI favors the nuclear option in the ongoing discussion of responses to the threat of Iranian nuclear proliferation.
People are just so much in denial. You know, they don't even want to think, oh, we can bomb, you know, we can send nuclear bombs against Iran 300 miles from Russia, and Russia's not going to do anything. Wake up.
Her protest didn't attract much attention, but did provoke insightful discussion with those who stopped to listen.
Free press back
We
then.
had a free press.
We don't today, no.
You know, the media was on our side.
Media
If there was a
speaks the government
protest, it
line.
was covered. And it
Exactly.
explained why we
The
were
media
protesting.
is liberal, but it's Clinton liberal. And Clinton is an internationalist and an interventionist.
Well, it's become...
Carol, like many other protesters, is passionate about her cause, but struggles in getting others to empathize with her.
And then somebody's going to have to say, well, gee, could bombing Iran lead to nuclear war with Russia? You know, the question everybody's afraid to ask.
Clearly, she stands out, but judging by most people's reactions to her discourse, it seems that she has trouble elevating herself beyond being just another person standing on the street corner handing out flyers. In spite of the limited response, Carol still held firm to her beliefs in her reflections about her demonstration.
Well, it's always good to come out, tell them what you think. They need to hear it from somebody. But it shows them, because we've had big protests here before. They know we'll have big protests here again. So they know that the protesters are watching, and they know the public is watching because...
Carol Moore is not the only passionate activist who is dedicating significant amounts of time to the nuclear proliferation issue. In fact, in front of the White House right now is a woman who has dedicated her last 25 years to the dangers of nuclear proliferation. Her name? Concepcion Picciotto. On her website, she calls herself the President's closest neighbor at 1601 Pennsylvania Avenue. Although she is considered homeless, she has lived across from the White House since 1981. Concepcion has had many visitors. Her primary audience is tourists. She has the opportunity to be seen by the packs of tourists who come to visit the White House. Although her protest probably doesn't have an impact on any of the political figures in the city, she does seem to have an impact on those who visit. There was one particular tourist who got enlisted to help Concepcion with her mission. I asked him about his experience and what he thought about Concepcion and her demonstration.
Well, I wanted to go on a picture with her, and she asked me if I would want to hold up the sign, and I thought the cause she's protesting for is good, so I picked up the sign and just hold it up.
Concepcion depends on people like him for when she needs to eat at a nearby homeless shelter or use the bathroom down the street. She has even been given a post office box from supporters. It is clear that Concepcion has a strong effect on those who stop to listen. But not everybody stops. Why is Concepcion more successful with the issue than Carol Moore?
I think they have to start with someone. I think if someone's passionate and committed and has charisma and can join other people to the fore, yeah, like rally people, absolutely. It's almost like she just wants to point this out to people who pass by because they know that the White House attracts a lot of people. Like she's just trying to maybe enlighten people for a few minutes while they have their picture taken in front of the White House.
Concepcion is different from Carol because she doesn't try to get in the face of every passerby. Being slightly more passive helps Concepcion because people are less intimidated and often come up to her with questions or to get a picture taken. Even though the difference she makes may be small, Concepcion, like many other activists, takes it all in stride and continues her self-given mission.
Shame of the world. A real shame. Bush bombing, no more evil. Bush is the ashes of evil.
Even with Concepcion's seemingly never-ending passion, she still suffers the same problem of becoming just another protester among many. Slightly more successful than Carol, Concepcion still struggles to find that one specific unique quality to elevate her protest to the next level. Concepcion is not the only activist struggling with the challenge. Although the White House is a great place for demonstrators, it can become a pitfall for those unable to separate themselves from being just another face in the crowd. The Catholic worker, for example, demonstrates using some very powerful imagery. Some of the activists involved think that they are getting their message across.
Everything that we do has an effect on us and hopefully on people who witness what we're doing. This is the closest that we can get to the President-elect, George Bush. We have no other access to the decision makers except by coming right to the front sidewalk of the President's house to make an appeal on behalf of the prisoners, on behalf of the victims, that we have to proclaim God's way of justice and nonviolence.
The best is when a group of school kids come up. That can be kind of rough, but at least if they're interested and I'm patient, they'll learn something. Most of the time they'll learn something.
And today, like mostly all the Fridays that we come here, we have mixed responses. There are some people who are very interested, some people are very indifferent. Today I didn't see any vocal negative response. Some days there are people who are very vocal in opposing what we're doing here. But we're here today to remember the Guantanamo prisoners, especially on this international weekend of protests calling for the closing of Guantanamo.
But other participants conceded that the demonstration wasn't as effective as they would like it to be.
To me, I don't know if it's successful. I don't know if it makes any difference to get out and say something or do something or stand there with a sign or chant. I don't know if it makes any difference, but it makes a difference to me.
Another couple of activists who protest fairly regularly at the White House are those using satire and humor to grab attention. One particular interesting activist was a man who identified himself as Death.
I'm Death from way down under.
What brought you out here today?
The war and tyranny in the White House. My signs, I think, are thought-provoking, and I want them to think about what's going on. I don't want them just to look at me and laugh. I want them to look at me and think.
What have people said to you?
They've said everything from, God, you're brave, you're doing a great thing, to you're a slime ball. What caused me initially to start doing this? Well, the 2004 election, I had a sign similar to this that said the Grim Reaper endorses Bush, because I knew Bush was a purveyor of death, okay? And he has proved me correct, okay? And the Grim Reaper certainly endorses Bush because Bush endorses the Grim Reaper.
Although he has a lot of passion and does grab people's attention, he is often dismissed by most because of the way he chooses to demonstrate.
Costumes that scare small children is probably not the best. I think people look at them as cartoon characters. I think their message is that effective. I think you're more looking at them as strange people.
Another, less intimidating character is a man named Eric. But when he's demonstrating in front of the White House, he identifies himself by his web handle, yellowcakewalk.net.
Hey, it's a day like every other day. This is probably the 70th time we've been out here in the burning sun, in the freezing cold. Come out every Saturday and every holiday to protest the criminal Bush regime.
Eric and his partners clearly share a passion against the current administration and choose to express that passion through a form of entertainment. I asked him how the reactions are to his demonstrations.
Almost always positive, almost always positive. There's a little negative here and there, but almost always positive. I love it, I absolutely love I have fun out here. I would demonstrate anyway. I've always been a protester. Having the mask on and having some fun doing this makes the time pass faster. People take pictures. When they take a picture, they go to our website, which has a message on it, and also can send them to other places for information. So I think we make a difference. We're not just out here playing. Sometimes we'll have, if it's a busload of kids from some school, everybody will wear a mask. And sometimes I have several Bush masks and several Cheney masks, and everybody dresses up for a photo opportunity.
Eric was right. Many people see his demonstration in many ways.
Well, they're exercising their right. They're doing their thing. Everybody has their own way of getting their feelings across. Some do it by posters, some do it by, like he's doing.
They're not doing the right thing, and when we have men on the ground fighting a war, that's the last message they need to hear. We're still winning 2 wars. Not real effective, thank goodness.
It makes it funny, but at the same time, you realize that it's good to know that there's other people who feel the same way you do.
What did it feel like going up there and being in the middle of that?
I think it felt great. It's exactly how I feel. Just read those signs where Cheney says, Bush is my little chump, and Bush says, I love greed and corruption. That's about right. That's the truth, I think.
But Eric, among all the White House regulars, seems to be the most unique and most intriguing for people. He often has many smiling people flocking to him for pictures. Eric, although he doesn't have much of a chance to convince any political figures in the area, he does make people think about the issues, and he does it in a way that doesn't intimidate visitors. This is a key reason to Eric's success. Eric also successfully plays off the number of international visitors to the White House.
And it's a lot of fun too, because people come from all over the world and they make signs in their own languages. We have 90 languages over here. We just got a new sign in Slovakian.
International visitors don't often realize that there is a lot of pressure on U.S. foreign policy.
I really appreciate that at least there are some people who see the truth.
After meeting Eric, some of them even leave a message behind for the president. All of these protests were successful in some ways, but they all struggled in getting to that next level. A level where they could be taken with more gravity, where they could draw some eyes from local political figures. A level of uniqueness that would separate them from the rest. Not to say that these demonstrations are poor. They understand that they aren't going to change the world, and they take what they do in stride. Activism is sometimes often more inspiring for the spirits of the participants than the spectators.